I suppose we can start. So hello and welcome to today's webinar. I want to ask if you can see the presentation that I'm currently sharing. Could everybody confirm, please?
Yes, I'm able to see.
Yes, me too.
Okay, thank you. So probably the rest can also see it. Okay, great. So welcome. Uh, welcome to today's webinar. The migration of Atlassian tools have become a very much talked about topic, so cited in all kinds of articles and forums. So we decided to hold a webinar where we would introduce the whole concept of Atlassian tools migration and speak about how to migrate and talk about things you need to consider, plan, and prepare for your migration plan. My name is Camille, and I have been working with the Atlassian toolset for 6 years for both enterprise customers and startups. And here with me is Tom Myers, who is a DevOps and Linux specialist and an OS developer. We'll be here to answer your questions. The webinar will be about 2 hours long, and we will have some 10-minute pause right in the middle. And it's also not meant to be a lecture, more like let's say, a workshop of sorts. What this means is that surrounding a topic like this, like migration Atlassian tools, there's a lot of questions. So should you have any, please feel free to write us in the chat. And during the second part of the webinar, we will have a brief QA session at the beginning where we can talk about some of the questions or some of the issues or comments that you might have. With that said, let's dive right in. So the whole topic of Atlassian migration is complicated. And considering it can make one's head hurt, there are many points to consider. It also seemed that the more you delve into the topic of migrating, the more questions you have. It's like that old saying that the more I know, the less I know. Because a lot of things can go wrong. And it's clear that once you migrate, you don't want to repeat that process again. As Atlassian announced the discontinuation of server, there's been quite a few people that had already said, hey, we just migrated from cloud. So what are we going to do? So this is one of the things that you don't want to happen, to migrate and then decide to go back or to a different deployment. Now, it's really easy to get lost in it. It's a very broad topic. Now, our job here is not to intimidate you from the topic. It's exactly the opposite. So we're here to help you get around this complicated topic and introduce you to the basic steps of migrating your instance, the important stages, and what to do in each one. Now, when I was preparing this presentation, Atlassian announced that they will discontinue their server offering. And this might sound very intimidating, given that you might have heard that the only viable solution is to migrate to cloud or to data center. It's not. However, we want this webinar to approach the migration topic as independently as possible. So first of all, I would like to say that many of you will probably decide to stay on server. Maybe your customers will, or somebody you know, and that's fine. You can stay on server, and if you apply several right steps, you can continue working as before. And there's not really a need to panic and migrate just because, you know. So this webinar, who's the audience for this webinar? This webinar is mainly aimed at those that need to migrate from server. For example, because of company compliance policies or regulations or simply a decision that someone from upper management have made that you can't stay on server. So for those that need to migrate, we prepared this webinar. So what exactly have happened in these past 2 weeks? What's the announcement? Now, as you probably all know, Atlassian will stop selling new licenses and cease new feature development on February 2nd, 2021. for all products except Fisheye, Crucible, and Bamboo. Why those three? Well, first of all, Fisheye and Crucible has been in basic maintenance mode for quite some time. And Bamboo is announced to be deployable in data center, but Atlassian haven't really mentioned the date. When is that going to happen? The step of these new sales also applies to Atlassian apps like advanced roadmaps or team calendars for Confluence and also Insight, and Atlassian Marketplace Partner Server apps. Now, here's an important distinction to make here. This doesn't mean that you can't renew your existing license. This only means that you can't buy new licenses. From May the 1st, the same year, it won't be possible to upload new server apps to the Atlassian Marketplace. And in the following year, until February 2nd of 2022, Atlassian will provide database, browser, and Java support and fix bugs that come up in server applications. So it doesn't mean that if you renew maintenance right now that it won't be worth it. Of course, Atlassian will try to supply you with various bug fixes and things like security holes, not with security holes, but with patches for critical security breaches and vulnerabilities. Other application upgrades and downgrades will stop on February 2nd, 2022, which means that you won't be able to either upgrade or downgrade your instance. Also, and this applies to the first date, to the February 2nd of 2021, you won't be able to upgrade from a starter license past this date. A starter license is a 10-user license, and upgrading it to the 25-user tier license is considered to be a new purchase. So after February 2nd, 2021, you won't be able to upgrade your starter license because it's considered a new purchase, a new license, new type of license. So what happens then? Well, on February 2nd, 2023, it's the end of app sales. That means every app on the marketplace. However, if you renew your apps during this final year, their maintenance will be extended until February 2nd, 2024, which is end of support for all Atlassian applications, besides those I have mentioned at the start. What this means is that between 2022 and 2024, Atlassian will deploy only critical security vulnerability patches. So that's the main difference. Between 2021 and 2022, while Atlassian won't develop new features for server, they will still come up with support for new browsers, databases, Java versions, and bug fixes. And between 2022 and 2024, those will cease also, and there will be also only the security patches. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around it, but it's quite well explained on Atlassian on Atlassian website. If you Google the I think the way to cloud or the migration, accelerating your way to cloud, something like that, you will be able to find all the necessary information. All right, let's get back to the actual migration. So what exactly is it? Well, migrating your Atlassian tools means that you're changing your application deployment type from A to B. The possible deployments as of now are cloud, which is hosted by Atlassian, paid on a subscription basis and either annually or monthly. Server, which is self-hosted and purchased once. You can also buy a voluntary maintenance period from 1 year upwards, which includes security fixes, bug fixes, and of course, new features. And then there's data center, which is self-hosted and paid also on a subscription basis, like cloud. It is a multi-node setup that allows for example, high availability and disaster recovery and scaling. So one of the big arguments for migrating are that the current setup doesn't work for the users as well as it did before. So for example, if a Confluence instance that is used as a public documentation or a company intranet gets thousands of visits daily and it slows down considerably because of this, well, maybe it's a good time to start thinking about a data center instance that allows for a better performance. Or you might need to apply various customizations and integrations with internal systems. You need more security and disallow access from the internet to avoid various attacks. Then you will go for server. Or if your company wants to use the latest cutting edge technology and features, you will go for cloud, which is automatically updated without you needing to upgrade it. Another reason, well, security requirements. Many large-scale enterprises are aware of security standards they need to adhere to, like data residency, privacy shield, GDPR. Others may place their data only in systems certified for security through certifications like SOC or ISO 27001, maybe privacy shield. Some customers migrate to Atlassian Cloud because they won't have to take care of their hardware or data center security, because Atlassian will take care of that for them. Atlassian Cloud is also certified for SOC, ISO 27001, Privacy Shield, and several other valuable certifications. Yet, some customers, mainly European ones, prefer to stay on server or data center, as they cannot afford to have their data resided on cloud servers. That's also, I believe, one of the reasons people will turn to data center instead of cloud to keep the data on their own servers. And of course, there's costs. So another reasons for migration might be the costs you might save. So a company might spend a lot of money on hosting costs, for example, or for paying cloud providers. Because of this, customers migrate to cloud to avoid the costs associated with maintaining IT infrastructure, like electricity, storage, hardware, personnel, and so on. Other customers migrate to server because there is no need for paying an extended maintenance or the cloud subscription, and security vulnerabilities were taken care of by simply hiding their application on the company intranet. And yet, other customers chose data center to prevent downtime and various fines or revenue losses because of this downtime. The first step when you migrate from server is mainly to assess which particular deployment is good for you, or if it will even work with the company's existing policies and regulations. The first thing to consider when deciding between cloud or DC is the number of people using the tool. Right now, the data center deployment starts at 500 users at I think $20,000 per year, which isn't as suitable for small teams as cloud applications could be instead. So cloud offers either monthly or yearly payments, with the user fees being much more granular than server. So if paying monthly, you pay only for the number of users you actually have. As an example, in case of 11 users, you wouldn't need to buy a 25 user license like you would on server. You simply pay for those 11 users. Second, you have to account for hardware costs, implementation, and maintenance. Because should you decide to go for data center, it's a self-hosted platform that you need to prepare the infrastructure for. Upgrades are another topic. Because cloud is being continually updated, there is no need for you to implement downtime windows or do the upgrades yourself. Thankfully, data center has an option of zero downtime upgrades, so you should be able to perform these without much hassle. Still, it is something to routinely take care of. Customizations. Now, Jira Server allowed for a wide range of customizations that will remain should you migrate on data center, as the general features of deployment will stay nearly the same. Customizations on cloud are severely limited. For example, you can't change your URL, have your own SMTP server, listeners, email templates, intermediate SSL certificates, and so on and so forth. So if your configuration is customized, the best way to retain it is by migrating to data center. Data residency is very important to many companies because they simply cannot place their data on cloud because of various compliance policies or regulations. So while it is possible that there will be data residency options in the future when using Cloud Enterprise, but then still you would need to take care of data residency of the apps, as each app vendor stores the app data on his servers in the case of cloud. So in this case, if you need to ensure data residency, the best bet would be using an on-premise data center deployment. Availability and downtime. Well, if you have data center deployment, you can deploy as many nodes as necessary to minimize the chance of downtime, and even maybe to prevent it altogether. On DC, data center, when one node fails, the system runs from the remaining ones to ensure, well, high availability. On cloud, you need at least a premium subscription, a script subscription to Cloud Premium, to enjoy a high uptime. It might be worth mentioning here that cloud, as of now, has 4 available types or subtypes. There's cloud free, which is a small version that is free for a small number of users, good for testing. There's the basic version, and there's the premium version. And the premium version actually has a SLA of I believe 99, 95% or so, and several extra features. I think like project archiving, and then there's Cloud Enterprise, which is the 4th mutation. It's, from what I understood, it's still in development, but it promises to deliver things like sandbox environments, I think advanced encryption, and of course data residency. So you should be able to choose where your data is located on this type of cloud deployment. All right, moving on. User provisioning. Again, this varies. On data center, you can use your own LDAP or Active Directory provider and also implement SSO through either Crowd or the embedded SSO 2.0 functionalities. Now on cloud, custom LDAP access isn't available, but you can connect to G Suite and several other systems, including ADFS, Azure AD, Okta, and several others. However, there are still other factors to consider, and I would like to invite you to read Idalco's recently published article on migration to learn more. I will put the link in the chat and on the next slides. Also, before you migrate, it's useful to check your instance for objects that you don't want to move, which are current deployment. These might be old, unused, or simply incompatible with the new deployment type. So the next phase is the cleanup phase. So what we will be cleaning up? Well, a cleanup would concern, in case of Jira, among others, various projects and issues. You can archive them, export them, create a backup, and doing this before migrating will not only help with faster searching and better performance on the new instance, but it will also make your users' job easier because they won't have to search through tens and hundreds of projects. For doing these cleanups and for checking which objects are actually used on your Atlassian tools, I would recommend for Jira tools like Optimizer for Jira and Configuration Manager from Botron to export the unused projects to archive them. Same goes for Confluence. Now, You probably wouldn't want to migrate old and unused documentation. So spaces can be exported, and you can measure which ones are actively read or edited by users. If you use an app like Better Content Archiving, it's a very interesting server add-on that actually measures the usage of your Confluence spaces and pages. Finally, there might be old repositories in Bitbucket where code is no longer maintained or developed, and there's not a real need to migrate it. You can create a backup, ensure its integrity by perhaps recovering the backup on another system, on another instance, like your development instance, and delete the old objects after for a smoother migration and a better user experience. These are, of course, application-specific objects, so you might need to check, for example, which users are active. That applies to all kinds of Atlassian tools. If there are users that haven't logged in for at least half a year, it might be safe to disable them. Not delete them, but to disable them. You'd also need to make an inventory of apps that are no longer used, because they might not even be compatible with the new deployment type. Lastly, check which scripts you use and whether they can be migrated or adapted in some way. For example, transfer to Cloud's automation for Jira. Now, Scripter is also supported on Cloud. Its features are limited to an extent, but if you're relying on, for example, some application listeners in Jira, they might be adapted to automation for Jira in Cloud, which is a part of the offering. And the next step is to make a list of all the necessary decisions and stages you want to make when migrating. Now that we've chosen the deployment that we want and perform the application cleanup, let's plan the migration itself. Now, planning the migration requires you to be familiar with quite a few steps. We have compiled a list of these steps on an article available through the link you will see. Again, the migration article on Hidalgo's website. There's plenty of them. There's like 20 or 30, but let's talk about at least a few. First of all, licensing is very important. In case you would be moving to cloud, it might be useful to take advantage of the extended migration trial offering, which enables you to use the cloud site until your server license expires. This way, you don't have to worry about purchasing the license at the right time, which ideally would be when your server license was to expire. As for data center, it's better to term the data center license when the server one would expire. But again, I would advise buying a data center license before the price rise on the 2nd of February, because on the 2nd of February, Atlassians will be again raising the prices for their server and data center offerings. If you're migrating to cloud, always migrate on a staging instance first to avoid possible complications. We will cover that point in more length later, the staging instance point, but right now, the important thing is to establish this instance. So have a license ready and have a staging instance ready, because you don't want to be migrating straight on production. Now, a cloud migration can be done via either a site import, which is a more labor-intensive method, or via a migration assistant. Migration assistants are easy to use. There are free add-ons by Atlassian that help with migrating and are currently available only for Jira and Confluence. However, they still have some limits, like no service desk support, certain custom fields aren't supported, and so on. They're still developing it, so it might be at this point much better to use site import so you can control the whole process. We have already mentioned scripts as something to look for when cleaning up your instance and considering if they can be migrated. A much harder thing to transfer could be custom integrations, for example, API integrations with other systems besides Jira, DB integrations like through Elements Connect and other tools. So before you migrate, you should have a replacement integration ready to test. What this means that the new integration should be compatible with cloud. On data center, it might be again more easier because of the common deployment type on premise. By this point, if you plan to change your deployment to cloud, it would be a good time to schedule user trainings, as in preparing, for example, announcement banners and documentation, and having live sessions with your users where you can explain the new deployments to them. Where can they find the things they were used for? While on DC, the environment won't change at all, basically. When your users enter the cloud interface, some things might appear very different than they did before. For example, there's the new issue view, new creating projects interface, new Confluence editor, new administration interface. So these things are all different from server. And these things also need getting used to. And a user training session or two should clear everything up. This also means that the users should know where to look for support in case something doesn't work. So during these trainings, it's a good time to notify them of the Atlassian team support email, the Atlassian team support project. By Atlassian team, I mean the in-house Atlassian team, like the admins that actually take care of the instance for you. Another thing to prepare is a migration plan or a schedule. By this, I mean a document with an actual timetable, like when is each step going to happen. This plan should also include contacts for various stakeholders that might be involved in the migration, like OS admins, database admins, and the like, in case you need a quick help during the migration. It might be a good idea to ask a few testers to help you out during the migration, and why we will get to that in the next points. What is also, well, nice from Atlassian is that Atlassian support declares that if you tell them in advance when do you plan to migrate to cloud, that they will dedicate the necessary resources to help you out during this process. So these are only a few important points. For the whole list, that includes, for example, various XML errors that you need to fix before the site import, or the structure of your backup file, see the full migration checklist at the URL displayed. All right, so you have everything planned and ready to go. So let's proceed with a test migration to your staging server. Now, a staging server can be sometimes called a testing server or development instance. In our case, the name staging means that it's an instance with identical or very similar set of data and configurations, like your production. It's the place where you should practice your migration at first. But why would you want to use a staging server? Well, first, you can practice the migration and see what awaits you on each step of the way. Also, in case there are any issues, and there will be, if only a few, you have the opportunity to learn how to take care of them and prevent critical errors or defunct features on production later. So we recommend to always migrate to a staging instance to test the waters, just like you would do when performing a server upgrade. So how to acquire a staging instance? Now, on server you had the option of deploying an instance with a development license. So how do you go about this in cloud and on data center? So for cloud, you can ask for a 7-day trial version, which can be extended if you explain the need to Atlassian support. They are very open to extending your trial period if you are testing your migration this way. With DC, you have more time as you can create a DC cluster from your regular testing instance, provide the necessary hardware, and add these several other servers later. Now, the contents of these other servers of the data center cluster can then be erased and reused as a part of your production deployment because they will be scaled for the staging migration. And another good reason for using a staging instance first is that it creates an environment where other users can join you for testing and help you out. So we have passed the first 4 steps, the assessment, whether cloud or data center are more viable, the cleanup, where we deleted the data or archived the data we didn't want on the new instance. We created a step-by-step plan for the whole migration. We created a schedule, and we have performed a migration to staging. So at this point, I would just like to check if there are any questions or comments that we could address. So if you'd like, you can either write them in chat or simply unmute yourself and ask what you'd like to know.
I would like to ask if you have any more information about the scale of cloud. I mean, you said there is free cloud. I'm familiar with that. And normal scale, let's say, the cloud, and then high availability cloud plus enterprise. If you have any more information about this one.
Okay, so if I understood the question, if I understood the question, it's mainly about the differences between the enterprise cloud and the premium cloud.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So let me just for a minute. Well, I think the biggest features of the enterprise version of cloud is that they want the users to be able to choose the data residency, as in where does the product data reside, like whether in the US or EU or someplace else. There's also a higher SLA. I think it's about 99.9% uptime, I think. And I think you actually get premium support, but I'm not really sure of that. There's also the ability to change which features of cloud, which new cloud features will be released to the end users, so they don't get like huge changes which you can't control. And I think also Atlassian Access is bundled in the enterprise offering. So from what I remember, Atlassian Access allowed you for like two-step verifications, like through a mobile device or so. And now you were able to do a two-factor authentication through your user provider like ADFS or G Suite, and now via Atlassian Access, you would have it like in-house, like an in-house Atlassian two-factor authentication, SSO, and things like that. So I would say the main selling points of the enterprise cloud deployment is the data residency and the very high uptime. As of now, I don't think the pricing has been published, so it's hard to say how much it's gonna cost. However, I heard a rumor that the cost will probably be 2.5 times the costs of a regular cloud. And as far as the premium offering goes, I think there's also the high uptime option, where it's 99.95, I believe. And they're also promising to have a sandbox instance. So something like a test instance, I believe. You also get unlimited storage. You aren't limited to 250 gigabytes like you would be on the regular cloud instance. And you also have for premium support bundled in the cloud premium offering. And that's about it.
Thank you. I just want to know the main point of difference, because right now for us and also our customers, it's main problem that on cloud you just can't control upgrades. You just go and switch it, and many add-ons just stop the works for hours if you're lucky. So you just want to meet more about this.
I think this should be mitigated in the cloud enterprise version. Atlassian labeled this as change management, where you can actually decide when will you release the new features to end users, which again gives some time for example, user acceptance testing, where the users would try the new features on a sandbox environment first, including apps, of course. Okay. Okay, thanks, Tom, for publishing the link in the comments, so you can find the whole comparison of premium versus enterprise on the link in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on. So we passed the 4 stages of migration, and now we have our old production instance deployed on the staging server or the staging instance. So what's the first step? Well, the first step should be to test if the migration actually went right, or if there are any new problems or bugs that you need to address. So you need to perform UATs, or user acceptance tests. What's the purpose of these? Well, first of all, you as an administrator can't possibly accept to test everything that your users do on the applications, more so if there's several applications like Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, maybe Bitbucket pipelines. So you can't considerably test everything. So you bring your users for the tests. Now, testing everything in a one person would take a huge amount of time. So by then, you can use any help you can get, because you shouldn't delay a lot between cloud migrations, as the cloud infrastructure or settings or configuration might change. So you should do the tests as fast as possible. So that's where UATs come into play. Regular users will help you out by doing the things they do every day, but on the new instance, to identify problems that might occur to them in the future. To cover as much ground as you can, you will need a varied team. So in your testing team, there should be people from all over the company that do different things with the Atlassian setup, like a regular user who just assigns tickets, creates comments, maybe creates a filter or two, a power user that perhaps administers spaces or repositories, another user that works with apps or integrations, maybe a project manager that uses advanced roadmaps or tempo tools, And another user that, let's say, pulls data from the application to some business intelligence tool, for example, and so on. The point here is to have people that use the application as differently as possible on the testing team to cover the most ground. It's also nice to involve various team leads in this testing because their team members will definitely ask them all kinds of questions about the new deployment. For example, where to find something in cloud. So it's good to have these team leads in the loop as soon as possible. These team leads are often, let's say, Scrum Masters. So they, again, use the applications from a different point of view. For example, they create boards in Jira software. So that's another feature they can help testing. Now, how should these UAT be long? Now, the length of these tests, again, varies by instance size. But a week or two is a good estimate of how fast can the users do their testing, and you document the issues they might find. And what exactly will the users do? Again, all kinds of things. You can tell them to test, for example, you have the right permissions, or if they can access and work with various projects, spaces, repositories, filters, dashboards, regular boards from Jira software, adding and deleting comments, adding and deleting filters. There's really a lot of things these users can test. That's also why we have prepared a UAT test case at the link you see. It's a very sample test case in that you can add your own features you would like to test on it, but we have tried to incorporate the general features that users work with. So it should cover most of the regular operations that users do. Okay, so when the testing is over, it's time for the production migration. Okay, so you have tested the migration and learned about the do's and don'ts and tested everything. The procedure here will be the same as on the staging migration. You will follow the same steps, you will stick to the same plan. However, this time it is for real. So first of all, make sure to incorporate the feedback and insights you gathered during the staging migration and UATs. We weren't fixing things during the user's acceptance testing. We simply took notes of what didn't work and what should we do about it. So these notes that you gathered during the tests and the staging migration should now prove really useful because you won't have to deal with them for the first time. If you have migrated to cloud, there's also no need to create a new instance. You can simply delete all the contents of the staging instance. There's an option to reset your data in the cloud. It's recommended to migrate during periods of low traffic. These are usually weekends. However, before the time comes, you should have a clear migration schedule on hand available to all stakeholders. Don't put it on Confluence in case you will be shutting it down too. So what exactly is this migration schedule? Again, it should be a list of all involved people and operators like the OS admin, DB admin. You can include several testers from your UAT group to perform some last minute testing before you open the instance to your regular users and call it the new production. In this schedule, you should have all the contact details of the users gathered because if something fails and you need their help, so you can contact them. You should also mention when exactly will you be migrating, so these users all know what to expect. Before you do the production migration, make sure to let your users know very much in advance. You can do so via an announcement banner in all involved applications. so that the users know what is happening. In this banner, include the date of the migration, the link to the new instance, the relevant content like the documentation, training videos, who to contact in case of trouble, and so on. Before you start the migration, you should also send out an informative email to all users affected, all users in your application. This email should include similar info to the announcement banner. It could also mention that from some point onward, all of the data, all the users' work happening from one point onward will not be saved. For example, from Friday 6 p.m., your work will not be saved because on Friday 6 p.m. you would begin the migration. In case of cloud, also make sure to make the old instance read-only, so the users don't modify the data in any way, and so you avoid the data corruption in case of server. Now, in case of data center, you should give the appropriate permissions back when you finish the migration. The point of this is to avoid surprised users. They should all be trained by this point. They should know what to expect in the new version, and that there will be some downtime during this period of low traffic, usually the weekend. So then you migrate, perform the migration, and that's not the end at all. Your work doesn't end there. You migrate it, you have a new production, and there's still a list of things you should take care of before you call it complete. Post-migration support, what exactly is it? So after you start working on the new instance, it's realistic to assume that the users will have many questions. Maybe they will even find new errors and bugs that need fixing. Your Atlassian team should be ready for this, so make sure to allocate extra time of your Atlassian engineers for possible troubleshooting. There will be work at the beginning until everything calms down. The users won't have access, for example, they won't know their password, things like that. Also, the users will need to know at this point who to contact if there are such problems. So create a basic project in advance where users can record their questions and requests. You don't need to have an actual Jira service desk project, but it helps. It helps for the non-technical users to enter their issues. And in the post-migration announcement banner, tell users how to create a ticket in this project, so they know who to contact if there's any issues. You should also document the raised tickets, because many users will see the new setup and will be confused, but others who perhaps should have tested the instance but haven't will encounter issues for the first time. They might discover a problem with something that worked well on the old deployment, but now it doesn't. They might even request whole new features. So documenting the types of raised tickets in the first weeks post-migration helps resolve possible misunderstandings down the line. One of the purposes of this is to clearly say that these problems occurred on the old instance too, and they were not caused by the new setup. That's also one of the reasons you would keep your old instance online to check which errors actually happened during the migrations and which ones were there before. As for the old instance, I would recommend keeping it online for a month or two, because you'll never know what kinds of data you might need from there. Once the data is deleted, you can't get it back. And by this point, the migration was successful. Now, it's clear that we have touched only the general points of migration because each instance varies from the other. Again, I would like to invite you to read the migrations article on Idelco's website to gain more insights into this process. thank you for listening. We have went through the topics really fast, and let's hear your comments, ideas, and questions.
Yeah, I have one question. Hello.
Uh, yes, we can hear you. What can I help with?
Okay, we are looking for cloud to cloud migration.
Mm-hmm.
We have acquired one company, and their instance they are using cloud also, and we are also using cloud. So we want to merge their cloud instance into ours.
Mm-hmm.
So, after referring Atlassian documents, what we have finalized is first moving whole of cloud data to server, and
Mm-hmm.
then existing cloud to our
Mm-hmm.
company's cloud. Will that work, or any other suggestion that you would give us to follow?
Mm-hmm. So I'll just repeat the question. If I understood it correctly, you're looking to migrate both cloud and server data to one cloud instance. Is that correct?
No, we have two cloud instance, and
Okay.
uh, one cloud instance like A and B, and we would like to merge A and B in A instance.
Okay. So if you'd like to merge two cloud instances, I think the best way of proceeding about it would be to contact Atlassian because they are actually overseeing all the cloud data centers. So they could be able to help you with merging those two instances together. As far as I know, I can't remember any cloud to cloud instance like synchronization tool that would help with the merging. For example, there's nothing like configuration manager for server. So it's not available for cloud. So as far as merging cloud instances go, I think the best first step would be to ask Atlassian if they could help you with the merging because they have access to all the application data from the cloud side.
Yeah. Will this method work like we are migrating B cloud instance to server, and then with the help of Jira Cloud Migration Assistance tool, we are getting that server data into existing cloud. Will that work?
That would definitely work. However, I would rather use the site import instead of the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant because it has some limitations, such as some custom fields aren't supported. There's some problems with service desk data, and I'm not sure about the apps because the app data storage differs between cloud and server. So maybe instead of migrating to server first, which is of course very viable option, is very much possible. I would ask Atlassian if they could help you with merging the two cloud instances together somehow to prevent data loss.
Okay, sure. Thank you for your input.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so are there any other comments, ideas, questions? Okay, so it seems there aren't. So instead of the 2 hours, we actually managed to fit it into 1 hour because there weren't many questions and discussions regarding the migration. So I would like to thank you all for participating on this webinar, and I would like to invite you to the next webinars by Idelco, which concern mainly testing in Jira. And at the end of November, there I will be presenting an use case of HR in Jira and Confluence. So if you're interested in implementing HR in your Atlassian applications, you're very welcome to participate. So thanks a lot
May
for your attention.
may I ask a question out of topic?
Yes, absolutely.
We have the following situation because I was looking for migration, so I was not on the right topic on this one. But we have the following situation: we are a multi-company, and we have different instances, one in Portugal, one in Belgium, and things like that. And they are all on on their own Jira configurations and on their own Atlassian configuration. Now we want them to let the work have them together. And the question is this possible with not integrate the people in the other, that you don't have to buy for every people different licenses? You understand? If a guy in Portugal want to work on the Jira or the Atlassian or the Confluence on Belgium, then now we have to put them also on that Atlassian, and then we have to buy a license for it. But yeah, it gets a little bit expensive. So do we have to do a full migration to one big domain with all the instances in, or is it possible that we keep their own instances and we let on some way work them together?
Mhm. So I'll just repeat it if I understood it correctly. So you have two Atlassian instances, one in Portugal, one in Belgium, and you would like the users from Portugal to be able to access for example, Jira of the people in let's say Portugal. Is that right? Like
That's
to be
correct.
access the different Jiras.
That
Okay. Okay. So the question was whether you need to purchase an extra user tier for these users. Well, I suppose these are cloud instances, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, on cloud, uh, it really matters on your user tier and the type of payment that you do for these instances. Because if you have like a yearly payment type, which with, for example, I don't know, 1,000 users, and you have like 900, so there's still some space for the extra users, you would pay the same sum. But if you would pay it monthly, then you pay for each user that use the particular instance. So in case you would need your Portugal users to work with your Belgian users, they still need to be licensed in the second Atlassian deployment. So what I would suggest would be to merging the instance into one instance, or simply calculate if the users that would be accessing each other's Jiras are worth the extra investment of their licenses. There's also an option of synchronizing Jira instances via Xlate, a plugin that we in Adelco are developing. It basically allows issue mirroring, where users will see the same issues on both sides. So maybe that can help. But if you're using Confluence or Bitbucket, then I'm not sure if this type of mirroring is possible.
All right. That's the perfect answer I was searching for.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I thought so that we have to go toward full migration. So one big domain and things like that.
Mhm.
So, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. So anybody else has a question regarding migration or a similar topic? Well, if not, then again, I would like to thank you for your participation. And again, I'd like you to invite to explore the migrations article on our website. If you find any perhaps inconsistencies, or maybe even have an idea of what should be included in this article, feel free to email me on camil.per@idelco.com. I would be very happy to receive your feedback on the migration article. Okay, thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Good weekend.